Sam Pranger on the Share Chair podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Congrats on prom king.
Thank you.
So Elise is also the prom queen, and she's in the conversation. Congratulations to both of you.
Thank you.
Okay. The athlete, Sam?
Yeah, I am.
So what sports do you play?
Football and track.
Yeah, okay. Okay. What events in track?
Mid-distance, so like 400 and 4x4. And
How's the season?
good. We won conference last week. So for at least our race, and then we came in, I think, second or third overall for the conference. So pretty well for what we've done in the past, and regionals is coming up this weekend. So looking forward to that.
Are you going to those?
Yeah.
Are you going to be like competing in regionals?
Yeah. They take the top two in each event, and then I'm going for the relay.
And you're a senior.
I am.
And Sam, I mean, there's a lot to talk about, but can you tell the listeners where you're headed?
I'm going to West Point.
Yeah,
that is a military academy in West Point, New York, and that should be a really fun time. And I actually leave pretty soon. I gotta be there June 27th.
Oh.
So about a month from when I get out, in the next week or so. But yeah, it should be, that'll be an interesting time. And I know for those first 7 weeks that I'm there, I really don't have any forms of communication. So they take my phone and all electronics away. So basically, they just grind you down to nothing, and then they just build you up from there. But then after that, the next time is August 15th, and that's A Day. They call it Acceptance Day. And that's when they're kind of like, all right, you made it. And then it's just go through regular academic classes and stuff. So looking forward to going. Nervous, but looking forward to it.
When you're out, do you move right into an officer position? Do you have a commitment? How long is a commitment? Can you talk about West Point and how that works?
So it's a total of a 9-year commitment for starters, and it's 4 years of the academic load, which you're at the college, West Point. And then after those 4 years, you graduate and you become a second lieutenant, so an officer. And then you have to serve for 5 years, of which that varies obviously from which position you choose to do. And serving doesn't necessarily mean you're overseas, in combat or whatever. It just means you do whatever job you specified in training beforehand. Mm-hmm. So that can be, engineering or, medical or more technical on machinery or whatever. Really can vary. Right now, I mean, the ultimate goal would try and be to become a ranger, and that I know it's very hard to get into, similar to like SEAL training in a way. But yeah, that would be the ultimate goal, and that's more kind of infantry combative. It obviously depends, where we're at through the world, but that would be the ultimate goal.
So you would be possibly overseas?
Yeah, and that depends. It's hard to say where they'd put me, but yeah, there's a possibility of that, because we have a lot of bases overseas, so, you could go to Germany or wherever else, UK or...
What draws you to that?
It's hard to say, just because I've always wanted to be in a role where I could help people, and obviously there's many different ways to help people, from charity to, being a doctor or whatever else, but just I found this way is kind of like the best way that I feel I can help people. And then I don't think, joining the military, at least for my, purpose, it's not to kill people or harm people, it's to save people. And I think that's the ultimate goal, is to try and, protect people from other evils around the world. And I see, like, for instance, like ISIS, gaining power and gaining strength and doing all their terrible atrocities to people. And we're doing little things as a country to help over there, and doing some, airstrikes and other combative things. But I feel that, some more needs to be done. That's why I would like to, provide my assistance and help in, what ways may be needed. I would be the first to be in the military. In my family.
So that's cool.
How does your dad feel about it?
He's for it, because he actually kind of got an appointment to the Air Force Academy when he was graduating high school, but he really didn't know much about it and didn't really want to put forth that commitment with not really knowing. But and in looking back, he says he wishes he kind of would have done it, but then he would be in a different position than he is nowadays, obviously. But he's totally for it, and really, he's helped me through this process of getting the congressional nomination, and then doing all the applications, and really for it. Just for overall, you're supposed to be very well-rounded, student. Athletics, very important. Grades, very important. Community service. And then, so to start the application process, first you need a congressional nomination, and that can be from your local congressman, which for here is Bill Huizenga. That can be from a senator of the state or the vice president even. And so I had to fill out a application for the congressman specifically, and that was a long list of achievements and resume and other essays that I had to write for him. And then that was due, and then he goes through all those, and then they narrow it down to some, and then they interview. And each congressman and senator can only appoint a certain amount per spot. Like I believe he can appoint 10 people for one spot available at West Point from this area. And so he boiled it down to however many, and then you interview a certain amount. And that interview process was tough because it was about 12 people around the table, and then it's just myself there, so that was tough.
That's
just
intimidating.
Yeah, it was tough just getting shot at over and over again, but it was
Maybe not as intimidating as the Share Chair podcast.
Yeah, I ended up getting the nomination, and then that kind of gets you the next step. That doesn't necessarily assure you in the West Point, but it sure helps. And then from those people who got the congressional nomination, they then go to the Academy Board, and then they decide from there on the people who got that. And then they choose people, and I was chosen. I'm very lucky for it.
You do know about loss, and
Yeah.
so your mom passed away in November.
Yeah,
Is that
November
right?
13th.
November 13th. Your mom passed of ALS,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
And so, all growing up, did
Yeah.
she? I mean, have ALS? How long had you been kind of living with your mother who had ALS? Or?
So she's had it since I was about 3,
Oh.
so pretty much 14 to 15 years she had it for, which when I was 3 she wasn't instantly paralyzed. It just kind of started to where it started in her fingers and then her hands and then her arms and slowly moved throughout her body. So she was diagnosed when I was 3, but it maybe took 1.5 to 2 years until she was more fully paralyzed. So she's pretty much had it, or had it all of my, most of my life anyway, because I don't remember much back then, which most people don't anyway. But yeah, and so and then the last couple years, 2-3 years, she's lived outside of our home. At first it was in hospice, and then it was at Sanctuary at the Shore in Grand Haven, just right off US 131. And then there I would visit her every now and then. So yeah, she's had it most of her life, and I could understand her pretty good, because the disease basically it's very different for everybody, because the average lifespan is 2 to 3 years with it, and she had 15 years, so she's in that very high percentile of survivor, just living with it. And it's different for everybody, because some people are straight paralyzed and can't move anything, but can talk perfectly clearly. And for her, she was mostly paralyzed. She could move her hands a little bit, kind of tip her head a little bit, and kind of flex her legs in a way, but couldn't. But other than that, she was basically paralyzed. And her voice was very, very mumbled and very tough to understand. But just me growing up with, I could usually understand her a little better than people who have never experienced it before, just because I had kind of gotten used to it. And then. And I had noticed earlier, at least in the past several years, that I was like, well, she's not really changing at all. I'd kind of noticed, and then because it's just how other people would come see her, this time, then 6 months later come see her, and then they notice a change. But for me, it was harder to notice that change because I was always around her. And then as she started to live elsewhere, I could kind of understand it more on the change, and that she was getting weaker, more tired, more loss of energy. Her voice was getting it was a lot harder for her to speak, and I knew it was coming close around that, October, June, or August, October time. But at that point she had, which the reason she passed wasn't fully because it wasn't like a surprise, because what she had just basically decided to stop taking her meds at that point because it was becoming too tough because of the disease. So in terms of loss, it was slightly easier than you could say of being shocked by a loss, because I had known since maybe, September or October that she would be, starting that process soon to where she would stop eating and drinking. And then at that point, because I believe she stopped end of October, so it took about two and a half weeks, of which she did still drink fluids then, so that did prolong a little bit. And it's tough because I was telling her, I don't want you to be uncomfortable, but drinking this water will only prolong like the pain, kind of. Like, I wasn't trying to say, just go. I was just saying that, usually when you just drink water and don't eat, it doesn't, your body doesn't take it very well, which it'll help with the fluids, but it's just tough on the body to not have any food energy. And then so I was with her for those, last month, 3 weeks, and then so forth, and I could see she was getting weaker, of course, because of the lack of energy and so forth. So, but it was very tough on the family. I just kind of took it the way it is, and I was happy that I got to kind of talk to her that night before she passed, and just really kind of get out what I had wanted to say, and then I loved her, of course, and was very proud of her, and she was, I wouldn't want any other mom, even though she was in such a tough position and so sick. But generally how I've liked to look at it is that even though there's so many negatives to it, and she's been sick all for the majority, the ending of her life for 15 years, and the majority of mine, it's been tough on our family, especially myself and my dad, that I like to try and get the positives out of it. And my dad's been very successful in the business that he had to create in order to pay for the costs for my mom, so I'm thankful for that, because if she hadn't gotten sick, then he wouldn't have been very successful, and in that company he worked for later went bankrupt a few years later. So we were very lucky in terms of that he was able to leave, create his own business, and be very successful. And I like to think I've done okay this far, and I think that I've done pretty well. So I'm happy that I'm going to West Point and I've been successful, and I'm very proud of my mom, and I understand there's hardships, but I like to look at the positives, even though it's a tough situation. And she's free of her sickness, and that was another positive thing that I think helped me along anyway in my situation, is that I like to look at it that she's, like I said, she's free, and she's able to not be trapped anymore like she has been for so long, and that's very comforting for me.
Maybe for people who want to go into the military, or for students who are graduating, or just human to human, looking at someone as a person, what sort of advice would you like to pass on to anyone?
Just that, to really, as almost as cheesy as it sounds, just never give up, and just to keep pushing forward even through the hard times. And that's what I would say my mom has taught me, because she's pushed through all the pain that she could for those 15 years, and that's what he just taught me. No matter how hard the situation may be, that it'll get over eventually, and eventually times will be better, and just to always push through those hardships and just to keep trucking on no matter what.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Sam. My congratulations.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Share Chair. Stay tuned next week for a new episode.